This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to Moments of Clarity with Tiffany Werner, licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. Moments of Clarity's mission is to educate and end the stigma on mental health through the inspirational stories of our exceptional guests. You can join in the show by calling Tiffany toll-free at 866-826-1340 or on Facebook and Twitter at MOC with Tiffany. Now, here's Tiffany Werner.
Hi, and thanks for listening. This is Moments of Clarity. My name is Tiffany Werner. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about bipolar disorder and living with it. And my guest today is a mental health advocate with a musical twist, inspiring audiences, big and small, and with his theatrical work. In his performances, he draws on personal experience with bipolar to open a conversation on mental health with a unique sense of lightness, and humor. For 7 years, he played piano for Broadway productions of Wicked, Mean Girls, Motown, and The Color Purple. He has conducted and music directed shows off-Broadway and regionally, including at Dallas Theater Center. He is a featured speaker with This Is My Brave and the Jed Foundation. And in 2018, he won the Young Leader Award from NAMI, New York State. His original musical about bipolar, called Inside My Head, will be touring the United States in 2020. And I want to welcome to Moments of Clarity my friend Zak Sandler. Hi, Zak.
Hey, Tiffany. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have this topic and be able to have this discussion with you and with the audience. I want to welcome callers to call in 866-826-1340, 866-826-1340. And, of course, I'd like to say hi to Ed behind the glass, who's always helpful in running the show.
And a happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And, okay, so, Zak, let's talk about a little bit about how this all began for you and where your moment of clarity was.
Yeah, absolutely. So I should just start by saying, you introduced me as talking about bipolar disorder, and I just want to say to all the listeners that as of about 2 years ago, I've stopped using the word disorder and also the term illness, stuff like that. I'm glad you said it because now I get to talk about it. But basically, the point being that I feel like those words are stigmatizing when we're already stigmatized so much. And, and basically, so I use the more neutral mental conditions, and I also just say bipolar because it's something that, actually is positive in some ways, and to me, it's not about, I don't want to put the emphasis on being sick or the sort of negative side of things, because I think actually that will help us all feel better and move the cause forward more quickly.
Unfortunately, that's the diagnosis, but for the clinical terms, but I completely agree.
Oh, I know. My dad's a psychiatrist, and I've heard it a lot in the DSM, but we got to get that changed.
Yeah, I would completely go with that and support that.
Thank you. So you asked me about how it all started. So for me, it started in my junior year of college. My dad, I mentioned, psychiatrist. My mom's a social worker. We talked about our feelings a lot when I was growing up. But I actually really didn't know what bipolar was, didn't really know what a manic episode was. And so when this came on, I didn't have a whole lot of a sense of what was going on. It started with basically a depression for about a week. I essentially had to pick between my two biggest passions, which were musical theater and a cappella. And at Yale, a cappella is a huge deal, probably way too much so. And basically, I became the music director of my group, which meant that I couldn't do any other extracurricular activities. And I actually got an offer to be a lead in the main stage musical, even though I told them after auditioning that I couldn't do it. So I had to basically give that up. And
so a cappella, that's when everybody sings in unison and kind of sings the song together as a group?
A cappella, yeah. Basically, it means singers and no instruments.
Okay, yeah, then they're really talented, too.
Exactly, yeah, and there's often a beatboxer, which is basically vocal drumming, like that kind of thing. And so that was the tricky thing, and there was a moment where we were rehearsing and the cast of the musical came in to do their thing, and I just stood behind and pressed my ear to the door, sort of wishing I was on the other side. And I remember starting to feel very heavy and very hopeless and very unmotivated, which I'd never really felt before to that degree. And almost like there was a liquid of darkness flowing through my head. I could actually feel it moving. And then about a week later, I was walking home from a football game, and basically, I don't play football, but I went to this game. And essentially, I started to feel my mood lifting and more positive, more optimistic. I went to this party that night and flirted with all the girls and thought that they were all interested in me, which supposedly they weren't, because I went home alone. And basically from that point, I spent the next 3 nights staying up almost all night writing this 39-page manifesto on philosophy and psychology and humanity, which I called My Religion. And in that, I was essentially reducing the universe to a single point. And I remember I called my parents in the middle of the night one night to tell them about the shape of this apple that I was holding and how it was such a profound thing that the apple is round, like the life cycle and like the curvature, positive curvature of the universe and the colors and the Adam and Eve story. And my parents were both like, this doesn't seem difficult for you. So they actually drove through the night from D.C. and had my brother with them as well, and sort of showed up the next morning and took me to the psychiatrist at undergraduate health. And as I was sitting in the waiting room, I remember that I was talking about all these ideas in the manifesto that were so exciting. And my parents, I think they were, very worried about what was happening, and they weren't able to engage. They I felt like they were dismissing the ideas, even though they were probably just focusing on getting me help. So I got very angry with them. My brother, on the other hand, actually tried to understand and sort of worked with me, and I was very happy and grateful. And so in the waiting room, I actually finished my proof and reduced the universe to a single point right as the doctor called me in. So I went in there, and he basically said that I needed to go to the hospital. And I was shocked at how serious this was. And I said, I had no idea. Just give me a few hours to walk around with my family. I'll calm down, and everything will be fine. And he said, no, you have to go now. So I did voluntarily sign in, but I did not want to go. And when I got there, I actually felt pretty positive. I said, okay, I'm going to prove to the doctors that I'm fine. I'll be out of here tomorrow. If any of you have been to the hospital for mental health reasons, you probably know that is a very unlikely scenario. So when the sun went down, I started to have these paranoid thoughts. The first one was that the doctors were trying to kill me with sleeping pills, because I had this idea that if I went to sleep before sunrise, that I would die. And sure enough, they were trying to give me sleeping pills, but they weren't trying to kill me. Right. So I stayed up all night, and I remember very clearly standing in the main area, and all these patients coming out of their rooms around 2 a.m. And I remember a nurse saying, this has never happened before. What's going on? And they started staring at me and pointing at me and saying, that's Jesus. You're Jesus. And I had no idea what to think. I was flattered and also a bit intimidated. That's a pretty big role.
Yeah, it's a big role to live up to.
Yeah, definitely. So I felt just sort of all these religious sort of grand ideas happening. And basically when the doctors came in at 6 a.m. that morning, there were 5 people that held me down in a chair and injected me with Haldol and Zyprexa and a bunch of other antipsychotics, Klonopin, I think, too. So then I basically slept for 24 hours, and in the morning got this bipolar diagnosis. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not crazy. I'm reliable and stable, and I'm responsible. There's no way I'm bipolar. And, my parents, knowing about the medical system, they were afraid that having a bipolar diagnosis on record would mean it would be difficult to get a job or health insurance because of the pre-existing condition thing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically convinced the doctors to say, okay, we're not sure unless you have another episode, so we'll just say your diagnosis is mood disorder, not otherwise specified. And so now I sort of think about it, and I'm like, not otherwise specified, is that a non-specific way to hide from the truth?
It's not otherwise. So, it means that they can't quite identify exactly what it is.
That's right, yeah. So I might meet some of the criteria for bipolar, but not
all of it.
To be, definitively diagnosed. So, basically I sort of hid that experience, what had happened from most people in my life, only told some close family and close friends, and the business manager of my acapella group, pretty much it. And luckily I came back to school. That was Thanksgiving, basically. I came back to school in January, and I'm so grateful to my doctor who recommended I come back, because I had all this anxiety over the break at home, and a lot of it went away when I came back. And I did hold on to some anxiety about driving on the highway and about performing, because I had these panic attacks the next few months in those situations. But then I was pretty stable. I was on medication for the next 9 years. I was on lithium. I was on Lamictal on and off, Klonopin on and off. And basically, it didn't happen again for 9 years. I thought maybe it was a fluke. And on Valentine's Day of 2015, which was 3 months before my wedding, I had another manic episode. Basically, I'd been sick. The doctors changed my meds, pulled me off too quickly, and I got really manic really fast.
Right before your wedding?
Yeah, 3 months before, exactly.
Do you think stress triggers the manic episodes for you?
That's a great point, Tiffany. I think it does, yeah. In fact, we'll talk about my most recent episode, and I'm certain that stress was a big factor in that one. And looking back at the one in 2015, I think I definitely had a lot of reservations about getting married and what that meant, and meaning that I couldn't be with anyone else for the rest of my life, and the specific relationship issues that were happening. So I think that was a part of it, for sure. And also the medicines were a big part of that one. Getting pulled off the Lamictal cold turkey and reducing the lithium at the same time, because they thought I was getting these sort of shaking episodes, maybe from lithium toxicity, meaning the dose would be too high on the lithium. And it's very dangerous. So my psychiatrist pulled me off, but it wasn't a good choice. And that episode was much more paranoid and less fun than the first one. I was worried that there were gunmen outside our window, even though we lived on the 7th floor, and that there was going to be a bomb at the theater for our Valentine's date, so we didn't go. And it was just that kind of thing. That was really scary. And luckily I had great medical care up in New York at the Weill Cornell Presbyterian Hospital. A really wonderful care. I was there 5 days, and basically that time I said to myself, this has happened twice. I guess this is just part of me. So I accepted that I was bipolar at that time. And my fiance actually suggested that, because I decided I wanted to make writing my career more so than playing piano and music directing, which is what I had done before. And so when I picked writing, she suggested I write about what I know best, which is myself, and specifically write about the mental health aspect, because it could be cathartic, it could be helpful to process things. And so it started as a very private thing. I would write these songs very often on the Staten Island ferry, because we lived on Staten Island for some reason. We had a job in Staten Island. So I would take the ferry to work every day, and 25-minute ride, and then 35 minutes on the subway. And I just wrote a number of songs that way. So it was very private, very for me. And then a few months later, we got a group of actors and a director, and basically did what's called a table reading.